Before the break, we discussed the Sunday worship service that was abruptly disrupted when a group of protesters entered City's church in St. Paul. The reason they gave, of course, was that the pastor was somehow associated with ICE. Yeah, he was the field office director or something. Of course, the service was interrupted. Families and children had to flee the sanctuary. And the incident has now sparked a federal investigation. The Department of Justice says it's examining possible civil rights violations and other crimes that were committed when those people entered the church. Attorney General Pam Bondi said the actions were meant to intimidate worshipers, and they'll be met with the full force of the federal law. Local church leaders have condemned the disruptions as disrespectful to the congregation and inappropriate during a religious service. What happened in St. Paul reflects a broader concern, the increasing targeting of religious institutions during periods of political unrest, raising serious questions about the safety of American churches, the sanctity of sacred spaces, and the boundaries between protest and intimidation. Joining us now is Pastor Michael Morisi to discuss what happened inside that church and give us his take on what's happening inside the American church more broadly. Thank you so much for being here, my friend.
Hey, thank you, David. I appreciate it. I'm glad to be here.
Look, I mean, everybody, I think, was horrified with what we saw. People praying and having protesters come in, chanting and screaming, scaring people out. And then you see Don Lemon go today in the press and say that churches, it's just white supremacy. It's a white supremacist idea to be able to worship without disruption.
There's a certain degree of entitlement. I think people who are, in the religious groups like that, it's not the type of Christianity that I practice, but I think that they're entitled, and that entitlement comes from a supremacy, a white supremacy. And they think that this country was built for them, that it is a Christian country, when actually we left England because we wanted religious freedom. It's religious freedom, but only if you're a Christian and only if you're a white male, pretty much.
What is going on in the minds of the American left? I mean, we always known they've been anti-Christianity. But I mean, now they're getting almost outwardly violent towards it, right?
Yeah, no doubt about it. This is unprecedented what we saw happen, and what happened in that church is not journalism, it's not justice, it is complete desecration. A church gathered for worship, that's not a protest venue. It's not a political stage. This is holy ground. It's set apart for prayer, for repentance, and for proclamation of the gospel. And these protesters who stormed that church, they crossed a line. And you cannot claim moral authority while trampling on the consciousness of people who are just gathered together as peaceful believers. This kind of behavior, it doesn't liberate us, it intimidates us. And I think what Don Lemon did and what he continues to do is more than just observing a disruption. He amplified it. He egged it on. He created more of a problem than there was, because he was filming it and live streaming it while the worship was being interrupted. That's not neutral reporting. It's no wonder that even CNN fired him a year ago. But that was participation. He rewarded chaos, and he treated this violation of a sacred space as if it was okay.
Yeah, and Don Lemon, when he's interviewing the pastor as he's disrupting their service, and he says, "You guys have to leave. I'm protecting these folks. My flock," he calls them. Don Lemon's like, "Don't they have a First Amendment right to be here?" Does he not understand the First Amendment is to petition the government, not a church? The First Amendment protects your right to assemble in public. It prohibits the Congress from passing a law that restricts your ability to protest, but it also protects your freedom of religion. And he walks into a church with these people saying, "I'm just here as a journalist." So if somebody's robbing a bank, you can tag along with them and say, "I'm just here as a journalist documenting the crime." No, you're participating in it. What does it say for him to think that the First Amendment gives him the right to trample over a different First Amendment right?
Right. Well, the first free speech doesn't include the right to storm a church. There's no question. You can't disrupt prayer. You can't hijack a worship service. The laws recognize that. Our Constitution recognizes that. But more importantly, David, common decency used to recognize that. And I think the deeper issue is that when the church is targeted and mocked and invaded, and media just cheers or shrugs it off, we're watching a culture that has completely lost its moral bearings. This isn't about immigration policy. This is about whether or not there is anything still sacred in America.
Yeah, and to them, I don't think there is. I mean, the church has always been a threat to them because they don't want the church to have any more power than the government, it seems. Can you talk very quickly about the duality of the movement right now? We've seen a lot of people returning to the churches, returning to Christ, especially after Charlie Kirk was murdered. You have a lot of people finding their faith, yet juxtapose this with the American left, who is becoming increasingly anti-Christian. I mean, how do you view this playing out?
Well, I think when you stand for everything that God opposes, like the left does, there's a conviction that just hits your heart, and people can't tolerate and stand that conviction. So the only way that they know how to handle it is to lash out against those of us that they believe are causing that level of conviction in their hearts. Because whether you are a follower of Christ or a believer in God or not, you were created by Him, and so deep inside of your soul, there is a need to be with Him. And now they advocate for everything that brings him that that he is against. Whether it has to do with justice or life or marriage or gender or parental rights, all the things that are hitting us in our culture today. And I think it's time for the church to not be silent and not retreat and not be intimidated. We need to stand for truth, stand for order, and have the freedom to worship God without interference. Because if we can't protect the sanctity of the church today, then I don't think any freedom is truly safe.
Exactly right, Pastor. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for your leadership during such an important time.
Thank you, David. God bless you.
Up next, many Americans believe that ICE is just trying to do their job. But not everybody sees it this way. We continue our conversation on the political divide surrounding immigration enforcement. Former Illinois Congressman Joe Walsh is here to discuss.